Over the past year, online fandoms have been at war over which version of Superman is the absolute best, and I think we can all agree that these arguments have been a little annoying to say the least. So let's find out which Superman films are the best and which ones are the worst by ranking all 7 of them on this tier list. And I'm only ranking these movies because they are the 7 live-action feature-length solo Superman films. So there will be no black and white stuff, no Superman All-Star, no Batman v Superman, or anything else like that in this ranking. So let's get started with Superman. This is one of my all-time favorite comic book films. In just about every aspect, it's a great adaptation from comic book to film, and that's especially true with its main star, Christopher Reeve.
Who are you?
A friend.
In my eyes, Christopher Reeve has been and will always be the greatest actor to play Superman. As the Man of Steel, Reeve perfectly captures the character's charisma, charm, and stoicism. But most importantly, he also understood the duality between Superman and Clark Kent, and showcased that better than any other version of Superman. His Clark Kent is dorky, mild-mannered, and kind of a goofball, which he should be. It's what makes Clark Kent the perfect disguise, and the scene where he switches between Clark and Superman is legendary.
That's why he's the GOAT! The GOAT!
The story of this first Superman film is very simple and nothing crazy, but it is very effective. It's basically just Superman's introduction to the world, and a lot of the film is him saving people and stopping wrongdoers. It's incredibly wholesome, and I enjoy how in this very first film, there isn't some super strong enemy to fight, or any overindulgent battle sequences. It's just one incredible man amazing the world. I mean, he saves a cat from a tree. It's the most Superman thing ever. Absolute perfection. Although that kid's mom freaking smacks her in that scene. No one ever talks about that, but that happens.
Haven't I told you to stop telling lies?
But even though there's no big action scenes, that doesn't mean the film is without tension or stakes, because Lex Luthor's plan to sink the western seaboard into the ocean adds a ton of it, mostly because he actually does succeed, causing a ton of damage and even killing Lois. And it's only through Superman's rage and his ability to defy the laws of, well, everything, that he can spin the earth backwards and go back in time to fix it. Iconic. Although I will say the Lex Luthor part of this film is the only thing that doesn't quite work for me. We get a few too many scenes with him and his goons that go just a bit too long and really hurt the pacing. But that doesn't stop all these actors from perfectly capturing these characters. Margot Kidder is the gold standard for Lois Lane. She's charismatic, independent, and everything that Lois Lane should be. And she also has so much chemistry with Christopher Reeve. It's actually kind of insane. Gene Hackman is good as Lex Luthor. It's not a very complex performance, nor does it really have to be. He's just an egotistical, evil mastermind who is constantly trying to prove his intellect and trying to prove his superiority. But the real standout of this film is of course Marlon Brando as Jor-El. It's truly baffling how Brando phoned in his performance, but still showed some of the greatest acting of any comic book movie ever. He feels like a man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. And his final speech to his son before sending him off is so tender, loving, and delicate. You almost forget that Brando had to be lured to set with food.
Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy. Ooh, a piece of candy.
While some effects can look dated, all the flying scenes are completely timeless. Because what you're seeing is practical, all these sequences look real and truly make you believe a man could fly. The John Williams score is the last thing I want to mention about this first film, and I feel very confident in saying that this is the best superhero score of all time. The main theme, Lois's theme, everything from the action scenes to the quiet scenes, it's all gorgeously done. Not every superhero score should be like this one, but man, did John Williams make the perfect blueprint. The first Superman is a fantastic comic book movie that's always a joy to rewatch. It's full of charm, whimsy, hope, and fantastic effects. It's the perfect Superman experience, so it's gonna have to go in S tier. Superman 2. Now, there are 2 different versions of Superman 2 available, the theatrical version, which released in 1980, and the Richard Donner cut, which released in 2006. And since the Richard Donner cut is the superior version, that's the one I will be ranking on this tier list. Now, parts of this version are unfinished or look rough because it uses some archival footage that was unreleased, so I'm not going to be too harsh on any wonky effects or any shots that might look a bit odd. Instead, we're mainly going to focus on the story, including Superman's character arc. Clark has the story of coming to fully understand what his purpose is. is. He's been Superman and he's been doing good, but he doesn't fully understand that this is a responsibility. Lois finds out about his identity and the two begin their romance. And the scenes between Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder are wonderful, if only because of the buckets and buckets of chemistry these two have. And so Superman selfishly chooses a human life with Lois over his destiny of defending Earth and gives up his powers, which leads to him getting absolutely wrecked. But Clark realizes that he made a mistake, and that because Zod is taking over Earth, he can't be with Lois, which leads to the Jor-El AI sacrificing itself to regain Superman's powers, and to another decision that Superman makes at the end of the film that we'll talk about then. This story shows that the Man of Steel is not some perfect entity. He makes mistakes like the rest of us because deep down, he's human like the rest of us. And Christopher Reeve is truly able to sell Clark's guilt and anguish. Just a remarkable performance. The villains of this movie are pretty mid, if I'm being honest. General Zod and his goons have been freed from the Phantom Zone and they come to Earth to rule it, which happens to look like they're clowning around. I mean, come on, Ursa is collecting badges like she's Ash Ketchum. These are not serious people. I do like how much of a threat they present to Superman and the planet, but I feel like those deeper elements of Zod hating Jor-El have gotten lost in the sauce. Also, Lex Luthor really doesn't need to be here. He doesn't add much to the story, he just connects a few dots here and there. But the biggest issue with Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, has to be the pacing. The story is made completely weaker because of how it progresses. Superman gives up his powers, gets wrecked in a diner, sees that Zod is on Earth, and then immediately goes back to the fortress and regains his powers. That entire story happens within like 10-15 minutes. It's so rushed and really hurts his story, more than he got hurt in that diner. But despite the atrocious pacing, the ending of the movie really wins me over. The big final battle between Superman and the other Kryptonians is well done, exciting, and full of cool practical effects. And it's also cool seeing Supes outsmart Lex Luthor and take away Zod's powers. But the ending to the Richard Donner cut differs heavily from the original cut, in that Superman pulls an Uno reverse card. He goes back in time and undoes everything that happens in the movie. Lois never found out that Clark is Superman, Zod and his goons never came to Earth, and the Fortress of Solitude was never destroyed. And while this may seem like a cop-out and that Superman is escaping the consequences of his actions, this actually plays into his character arc because to undo all the damage that has been done, Clark has to give up his romance with Lois and let her go. And if that's not heroic, I don't know what is. Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, isn't a perfect film, but it presents higher stakes than the original and moves the story into a new, exciting direction. So I'm gonna put it in B tier. Superman 3. Oh boy, what happened? This film is just a string of nonsensical, baffling choices that from time to time features Superman. I guess my biggest issue with the movie is that Superman is a co-lead. It is really hard to argue that Clark Kent is the main character because the main plot barely revolves around him at all. The actual lead is Richard Pryor's Gus Gorman. After some quick digging, it seems like Richard Pryor was only included in the film because he was a popular comedian at the time, and the filmmakers thought that he would get more people to go and see the movie, which backfired tremendously.
What the fuck is this?
But in the film itself, Richard Pryor doesn't fit at all. He's doing these big comedy bits that don't fit the tone of the actual story. His scenes just feel completely out of place. And overall, Gus Gorman is one of the least likable and most annoying superhero film protagonists of all time. The story of this movie is also just really boring. These corpos hire Gus to hack into computer systems in order to disrupt the production of stuff like coffee or oil, but Superman stops them at every turn, and so they give him synthetic kryptonite which turns him into an edgelord. He's probably saying all kinds of crazy stuff on Reddit. In all seriousness, I don't hate the split Superman storyline and I think the fight is pretty cool. I just wish they gave Superman any kind of story that made any of this mean anything. Clark goes to Smallville and reconnects with Lana Lang because Margot Kidder had an argument with the producers and so Lois is barely in the movie.
Others of us who have to go to Bermuda.
The only good things I can say about Superman 3 are that I think some of the scenes of Superman saving people are really effective, and Christopher Reeve once again turns in a fantastic performance. He will always be Superman, but other than that, Superman 3 is a tonal nightmare with poor pacing, a dull story, and some awful characters. It really is just bad. What else can I say? It has to go in D tier. Oh dear God, why? For as bad as Superman 3 is, Superman 4, The Quest for Trash is so much worse. Every decision, every idea, every execution is just wrong. You know how in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, Miles Morales purposely got a 0 on his test because he knows the correct answer for each question and purposely chooses the incorrect one? Superman 4 is so bad, you would think that the filmmakers knew how to make a good movie and purposely chose to make a bad one. Let's talk about the story first. They saw Rocky IV and said, hey, let's do that, but with Superman. Because the Cold War had so many people shaking in their boots, Superman decides to take part in global politics by ending the arms race. And by that, I mean he collects all the nukes into a big net and throws them into the sun. The 80s truly were a crazy time because you could not show a superhero stopping a real world conflict in a movie made today. Twitter would frickin' implode. But while all of this is happening, Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor returns. He was not present for Superman 3, so I guess they offered him more money this time around. And Lex's big plan is to use Superman's DNA and the power of nuclear energy to make a being to kill Superman. And so he gives birth to Nuclear Man. This is a complete nothing burger of a character, and his final fight with Superman is interesting to say the least. A lot of what I just described is the main plot of the film, and it's truly baffling how this hour-and-a-half long film can waste so much time on nonsense. There is this strange B-plot where Superman is kinda dating but also kinda not dating both Lois Lane and Lacey Warfield at the same time. This whole storyline is nonsense and frankly way too goofy. I mean, Superman literally went on a double date with both women and was changing clothes to be both Superman and Clark Kent. But I will say, these bits are almost good just because of how genuinely charismatic Christopher Reeve is. I know I've said it a bunch, but that man is Superman. He plays both sides of the character exceptionally well, and he can carry scenes even in a dumb movie like this. Which, speaking of, yeah, there are a ton of unintentionally funny dumb moments.
Who's Santa Claus?
No, Superman.
What's that? Oh no.
Stop! Don't do it! The people!
Superman 4, The Quest for Peace is just not good. It's laughable, but not in the way they intended. And it's sad that this had to be the last performance of Christopher Reeve as Superman, especially since no other actor on this tier list will be as good in the role. But at least his last hopeful speech at the end of the film is somewhat well done, and feels like a kinda not awful send-off for the character. But yeah, this movie has to go in D tier.
Bananas.
Superman Returns. I haven't seen this film since it first came out over 19 years ago, and in those 19 years I've only ever heard people describe it as mid, and after having seen it again, yeah, it's pretty mid. The premise of this film is that it's a sequel to the original 4 films. On paper, that's a pretty cool idea, but in execution, not so much, because it creates some continuity errors like Superman's mom being alive, despite her being dead at the beginning of Superman 4. So either she found the Lazarus pit, or she might be a zombie.
Why? Definitely a zombie.
This narrative also forces the first half of the film to be a really boring game of catch-up, where both Superman and us, the audience, have to be reintroduced to the characters and this world, and see what's changed since the last movie. And on top of that, the film also unfairly forces these actors into trying to be the original versions of these characters, so the performances across the board suffer. Brandon Routh isn't awful as Superman. He at times shows the same charm and charisma as Christopher Reeve, but he also has this blank stare a lot. It's kinda strange. But I did find his version of Clark Kent much better. He's appropriately awkward, goofy, and kinda funny. However, Kate Bosworth wasn't very good. Nothing about her performance screamed Lois Lane. I guess it could be because outside of a couple scenes, she doesn't really do any Lois Lane things, but the fact that she is supposed to be the Margot Kidder Lois Lane is insane to me. These are completely different people. And then there's Kevin Spacey as Lex Luthor. Look, Kevin Spacey sucks. We all know that. We don't need to talk about him for too long, but I do have to be honest and say that he did a pretty good job as Lex Luthor. It was a very Gene Hackman inspired performance.
Superman will never.
Wrong!
The story of Superman Returns is really nothing to write home about. It's as basic as a Superman versus Lex Luthor plotline could be. It does include some elements that could be interesting, like Superman having a son, but the film doesn't properly explore that idea in any interesting way. For the vast majority of the film, this is just Lois's kid who's always having an asthma attack. Also, the pacing is absolutely brutal. Say what you will about every other film on this tier list, but Superman Returns is the only one you can call boring. This entire movie is monotonous, tedious, and downright slow. My goodness, this is somehow more boring than Fox News. Wait a minute, what the f are they doing on Fox News? What is this? Even though I've complained about this movie a ton, and even though its overusage of CGI is horrible to say the least, there are some keynote moments that go into the Superman Hall of Fame, like Supes catching the plane, or taking that bullet to the eye, or carrying that big kryptonite rock into space, which I know doesn't make any sense because he should not be strong enough for this, but the aura is insane. Yeah, all in all, Superman Returns is a misfire in a lot of ways. Boring story, mixed performances, and not enough cool moments to save it. It's gonna have to go in C tier.
You were just leaving.
No, sir. Not while the fate of my universe is at
Man of Steel. Okay, I'm just gonna say it right off the rip. I like this movie. I think it's solid, but it's not perfect by any means. I covered this movie in my DCEU ranking video from over a year and a half ago. That video is pretty outdated now, and since making it, I've gotten better at writing my scripts and making my points clearer. And since then, I'm not quite as fond of Man of Steel. Zack Snyder's strongest aspect as a filmmaker is his directing, and Man of Steel is maybe his best directed movie, because while I absolutely hate those ugly, chaotic zoom-ins, this is one Zack Snyder film without an egregious amount of slow motion, so you can really enjoy Snyder's creative shot composition and framing of these larger-than-life characters. And a ton of these action sequences hit so hard because of his directing. Also, the cinematography is just gorgeous. There are some shots in this film that will be forever burned into my brain. Superman's first flight, for example, is so gorgeous. Man of Steel's story is very similar to the original Christopher Reeve films, in that it shows us Superman's origin, and it's mainly about him fulfilling his destiny and becoming a hero, while also keeping Jonathan Kent's morals. There is this cool story element where Clark wrestles with both of the things that his adopted father and his biological father wanted for him, and while for the most part the movie succeeds at doing that, the triumphant moments feel triumphant, and the emotional moments feel emotional, there are some things about this story that really bother me. Most notably, Superman at times shows little regard for human life. Like, he's for sure trying to save people, no doubt about it, but he brings the dangerous Kryptonians to this small town, or lets this truck destroy the building behind him, or most dumb of all, he lets his dad die. And yeah, you can totally say that his dad wanted him to let him die, so he didn't expose himself to the world. But let's be real here, the world was not watching. It was a small group of farm folk. Even if they did spread the word that Clark had superpowers, who would believe them? So while I understand the sentiments behind Jonathan Kent's sacrifice, it just winds up looking goofy. But let's talk about the film's leading man, Henry Cavill. Yeah, I'm not crazy about his version of Superman. They went with a less charming, less charismatic, more quiet version of the character, and while that does work for a lot of people, it doesn't really work for me. I found it really hard to get attached to this version of Clark, and Henry Cavill delivered a somewhat flat performance. But one character I think works really well is General Zod.
Where did you train? On a farm?
Zod may not be the most complex villain, but man does he work well. As an intimidating force through the film, he adds some serious stakes. I mean, he pretty much tries to destroy the entire Earth to continue the Kryptonian race. And then once his plan fails, all he's left with is his hatred for Clark, and that's when he becomes a true menace. Also, Michael Shannon gives a fantastic performance.
I will find him!
But I will say, Lois Lane is mid as hell. How could the character writing be so bad that Academy Award nominee Amy Adams gives a bad performance? Seriously, this version of Lois has no personality, and she has absolutely no chemistry with Henry Cavill. Their scenes together are flat out painful. The last thing I'll say about Man of Steel is that Hans Zimmer absolutely cooked. His score imbues the story with so much importance and so much emotion, and while I don't think I like it as much as the John Williams original masterpiece, I think Zimmer's work perfectly fits for this version of Superman. But still, despite my many complaints, I think Man of Steel is a solid Superman film. It's one I think will work better for people who like that more serious tone, but there's still plenty to enjoy, like the directing the action, and the score. So it's going in B tier. But before we look up to the newest Superman film, I just want to say, if you're enjoying this video, why not hit that subscribe button and hit that bell icon. It will let you know every single time I upload a new video, and you won't miss a new ranking video or anything else that I do. Also, once we get to 100,000 subscribers, I'm dropping the Star Wars ranking. So if you want to see that, make sure you're subscribed. But until then, it's time for... In Quentin Tarantino's Kill Bill, there's a scene where Bill explains the difference between Batman and Superman. He says how Batman's true self is Bruce Wayne because he's a normal person who becomes a hero. But then he says that Superman's true self is Superman because he's an alien who pretends to be a human. But he couldn't be more wrong. Superman. This was the most anticipated film of the year for a lot of people, myself included. And what can I say? It lived up to the hype. Something that was very controversial before release was the directing and the visuals. And while some shots look off, some CGI looks unpolished, and some moments are overlit, this is overall a gorgeous looking movie. I really appreciate James Gunn making some very bold decisions when it comes to the visuals. He could have made something that looks like every other superhero movie, but no. The fisheye lens really puts you into the action, and the flying scenes, man, the flying scenes. I felt like I was flying in that theater. Some say the film is bloated and has too much going on, but I disagree. Yes, there are very many different plot lines and a lot of characters, but everything and everyone feels like they belong in this story. There honestly isn't a moment that feels like wasted time, and characters like Mr. Terrific, Jimmy Olsen, Guy Gardner, Hawkgirl, Metamorpho, and Ma and Pa Kent all have moments to shine, and each actor does an exceptional job. But for me, the three main characters steal the show. So let's talk about them, starting with Lois Lane, Rachel Brosnahan. That's it, that's the tweet. No, but really, she absolutely killed it as Lois Lane. She felt like the comic character ripped right out of the page. And I love how she actually did things in the movie, she was important for the story, and she has tons of chemistry with David Corenswet. Like, I actually believe these two are into each other. Lex Luthor. Oh boy, yeah, Nicholas Hoult is the best Lex Luthor to date. And it's not just because he's another Nick, okay, he's actually really good in the role. This is the most vile, most evil version of the character we've gotten so far. And besides maybe the Michael Cudlitz version, this is the most intimidating Lex Luthor we've gotten so far. And Holt is really able to capture Luthor's vanity and jealousy and how controlling this character is. Also, he's bald. Well, let's talk about the main man himself, Superman. Kill Bill was wrong because at the core of the character, Superman is human, more human than a lot of other different superhero characters. And this 2025 film explores that idea better than any other Superman film. Early on, the movie makes a really daring decision, and a lot of people will not like this, but I think it works because it creates this conflict where Clark has to figure out for himself who he is. And so he has this beautifully done character arc of learning what it truly means to be human and how that's where his strength comes from. And we see Superman struggle with trying to do good when it seems like every force in the world is stopping him from doing so. And David Corenswet, man, we follow him throughout the majority of the film and he carries it. He perfectly sells Clark's optimism and charm and charisma, but he also delivers the more emotional parts. And the moments where he gets angry or sad or frustrated feel real. And grounding Superman in this way through Corenswet's performance makes his story feel more, well, human. I could talk about this Superman film forever because honestly, it is that good. It not only lives up to the original Christopher Reeve Superman film, I might honestly like it more, but I'll have to watch this one a few more times to be absolutely sure. So because Superman is an excellent film with bold direction, great characters, and an emotionally impactful story, it's going in S tier. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, Crypto the Super Dog. Yeah, I love Crypto. He's adorable. I was a big fan of the Crypto cartoon as a kid, and seeing him here in live action was so special. But yeah, this is my Superman ranking. And while you may not agree with it, that's perfectly fine. I honestly have no idea why people have been getting so hostile over Superman of all things. If you're a Snyder fan who's upset about your film series getting canceled, I'm sorry. I bet that really sucks. But personally, for me, I'd much rather have this new version of Superman. Instead of bringing back Henry Cavill for a new series of Zack Snyder films, or a Dwayne Johnson vanity project where he beats the crap out of Superman for an hour and a half, I prefer this so much more. But still, I want to see all your rankings. Make sure to leave your own rankings down in the comments, and if you want to see another ranking video, you can click here to watch my ranking of every Jurassic Park film. It's a good one, you definitely do not want to miss it.